tomorrow. I hope you'll stay all for 2 days at least. We're going to start today with two keynotes by Rosario Durao and Janine Peek. Then we have a short break, and then we get another keynote by Dave White and one by Stefan Fredrickson. This session is being recorded, so I don't know if you have any objection to that. We won't do a live broadcast, so that's no issue today. But we will make the recordings available later, and then you can look back what has been told. So I hope you have a good day. I hope you see some very interesting talks, and you learn a lot about Information 4.0, about content automation, about digital transformation, and all the new words that are going around these days. We stay in this room today until 12 with the sessions. Then we have a lunch break at 12. During the lunch break, our sponsors, the vendors that have a stand, and they will have a program. Then you can have a look what they are selling to you. The other rooms, if you go out of this room to the left, we have 5 more rooms, and there's also the sponsor, the vendor market from the sponsors. Except from Quark, they will stay here in this location. So during lunchtime, you have a lot of time to talk and to look around. And at 2 o'clock, we start again with the breakout sessions, and those will be in the rooms in the other side of this part of the building. Yes. The hashtag it's IEN 2017. Hashtag IEN 2017. Information Energy 2017. So, okay. Any questions so far? No. So then I think we're going to get started with Janine, with the keynote talk. I'll set up the presentation. Okay, up to you.
It's always a little bit scary to put water in front of a computer. Yeah. But because this is an Apple, and I am from Dell EMC, you can imagine what could potentially happen today. So thank you very much for having me here today. I think it's an honor to talk to an audience I'm not very often talk to. Most of the time I talk to people about infrastructure, digital transformation, as the managing director of Dell EMC in Netherlands. And next to that, I'm also the chairwoman of the Dutch Industry Association, Netherlands ICT. And so it's fantastic to be here. It is interesting because I'm going to talk about digital transformation. It is interesting that the lady over there just said the most important thing is the hashtag. Because that is something I think 10 years ago, nobody could have ever imagined someone asking a question like that as being the most important. So before I go into my presentation, I want to start with a small anecdote. And before I do that, there are 2 important things you need to know about me. The first thing is that I am a health freak. So I always watch weight, and I'm always running a lot, and I watch what I eat. That's why I'm wearing a Fitbit to track the number of steps I take in a day. Very important for me to know that I exercise enough. Second thing you need to know about me, that I'm a sucker for blueberry muffins. Can't help it. So, very important. All right, so now the anecdote. I don't know if anybody of you ever went to Vegas on a conference. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So I was in Vegas last week, and we had the Dell EMC World Conference in Vegas, and I was staying at the Venetian, and you know, in Vegas everything is really big, and this hotel, the Venetian, is enormous. There's a conference center behind the Venetian, and if you walk from your room in the Venetian to the conference, it takes you about half an hour inside, so you're not even being outside. So it's like 2 kilometers or something like that. So for me, that's fantastic, because for my Fitbit, that is obviously very good to have. So I put my daily target at 20 steps a day, 20K step, 20,000 steps a day. That's easy. So halfway through the day, because I've been walking all around, my Fitbit starts to cheer. Yay! You made your daily goal. Second thing that happened is that I got a message pushed through my mobile device saying, there's a blueberry muffin and coffee on sale at the Starbucks that you just passed. And because I made my 20,000 steps, I obviously couldn't resist doing and getting to the blueberry muffin. But what was interesting about that is something that is very much about the digital transformation of today. I was not even surprised I got that push mail. But my IoT device, which is connected to the cloud, combined my Facebook pictures of me eating blueberries all the time together, and came to the conclusion, which is actually a big data solution, came to the conclusion that it would be a good idea to maybe send me to the Starbucks. So this is something about digital transformation that's happening in our daily lives. The only question mark I had, I don't know if you feel the same as I do, is that it is a little bit an invasion of my privacy. The only downside, maybe. So that's so this is a small example of what digital transformation is doing in our lives. A lot of things are changing. It's changing the way that we actually are and work and act. And it's changing in an increasing pace. This is not me, by the way, but could have been. It's the same as the digital revolution. The same as the industrial revolution. You know, the steam engine, the thing that you see here, changed a lot of the things that used to be manual labor, and then changed into more of an automated process. The result of that was everybody going from more the rural areas into the cities. Life changed. A lot of the ways that people are interacted changed, and we have called that the industrial revolution. The same is happening when it comes to ICT. There's so many things changing that it's even in the essence of who we are, things are changing. So one of the things, for instance, when the mobile phone was introduced, our span of, or attention span went down from 12 seconds to 8. Which is actually 1 second less than a goldfish. And I have two teenagers at home, and I can tell you the goldfish is definitely more taking attention to me than my children. So this is true. The other thing is changed is that we actually are not working in the office anymore. We work everywhere. We want to work everywhere. And you are all in the data environment. People want to have their data available wherever they are. If they are here, or they are at home, or they are at the office, or they are in the airport, airplane, it doesn't really matter. It's changing a lot in the way we work. And we also want to have data, and we want to have more data. Last week I was at the Dell EMC conference, and someone said nobody's deleting anything anymore because there's so much room to store everything. I don't know how you all are. I am actually more of a deleting person, but I don't know if you are, because a lot of people actually never delete anything anymore. They just store it and leave it there forever. Question mark you would have is this data really valuable for me, or is it something that I in the end never be able to find it back, which is very often also the case. And I think the downside of all of that digitalization is that we are also more at risk. He says it's like a million cyber attacks. I think this weekend we had the biggest cyber attack when it comes to malware ever. More than 100 countries were attacked by Windows WannaCry worm. Here in the Netherlands, I think the Dutch police was one of the most prominent in the news, but also one of the parking garages which didn't work. I wouldn't mind, to be honest, because you could just drive in without paying. So I think that was actually a good thing. But a worm like that is something that you can't imagine, that so many companies worldwide have been attacked by this particular cyber attack. But sometimes the attacks are also small. In this summer there was a hotel in Switzerland, I think it was Austria actually, hotel in Austria that locked all the people inside the room. So someone actually hacked the system and made sure that nobody could leave the room anymore. Well, or look at what happened in the elections in the US with the president. So a lot of things happening. In general, I can say that the digital transformation specifically brings a lot of opportunities to organization. It's very important, I think, for all organizations to make sure that you are going on the path to actually implement something of that. A research institution actually looked at organizations that do something with the digitalization of their environment. So how successful are organizations that are on the path to do something with it, and how successful are organizations who are not. And as you can see, organizations with the digital seniority just have more revenue, more profit, and more share, so value. So I think that's absolutely very important. And as you can see, some of the basic stuff has really changed. In the past, if you had a question, you call the customer service point, you have all those people behind the desk, but now you can use an app, and I know that one of the speakers later will talk a little bit about this topic as well. So how do you structure data in such an app? But that is something that changed, and we actually expect that to be changed. You don't want to call a data center and run through all kinds of standard questions. You just want to be held online or with a robot maybe. So digitalization is transforming a lot of industries. And I didn't pick Lego because you are from Denmark.
Stephanie.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting to see that for instance, Lego, I don't know who of you has children or who has played with Lego himself when he was younger. Well, I did. But Lego in 2004 was actually almost bankrupt. And why is that? Because young children don't want to work with offline kind of stuff anymore. They want to be online. So what did Lego do? They said, okay, we need to kind of work into getting this in a different way. So they transformed their industry by making an online version of Lego. And they connected the online and the offline version together. The moment they did that, revenue and everything went going up again. And it's actually pretty impressive transformation that they went through. Anybody know what this is? It looks like a bumblebee, huh?
Drone.
It's a drone, yeah. And this is a drone that was actually designed to make sure that flowers are fertilized. Pollinated, thank you, I didn't know the word. Pollinated, so because the lack of bees, a lot of this work actually changed from bees doing it into human interference. So people started to do it with all kinds of other, with hand. And someone came with a brilliant idea to actually make a drone bee that is doing the same thing. And I kind of like it that they made it the same color. So other things that are also happening in this particular case, this is actually a picture that's made by Google by analyzing a lot of paintings, in this case from a Dutch painter. And by analyzing all that data, came up with a completely new type of picture. And that is something I can say that you can imagine that maybe in a couple of years' time you don't need picture painters anymore because we have all those computers making it for us. I think one of the industries that I always thought it was a little bit old-fashioned, but one of the industries that's actually adopting new technologies in digitalization as one of the first is the rural, the agriculture, is a difficult word, agricultural environment. And this is an Internet of Things project called the Connected Cow, where cows are actually measured how it's a little bit like a Fitbit, so it kind of keeps track on where the cow is, what he's eating, his heart rate, his temperature, all kinds of information. And that information is sent to a central database, and the central database is analyzing everything that is going on with this cow. That means that you have less of doctors to have to interfere, because you know which cow needs to have doctor's exams or not. But you can also make sure that you analyze what cows produce more milk. What did they do? Did they exercise more? Did they eat more? Did they eat in a different spot? So all kinds of information that is very relevant, and kind of by introducing something like that helps the farmers to be more productive. In the medical environment, you see a lot of big data, of course. Analyzing all kinds of data, sometimes for instance, for genome sequencing, which was something that in the past, you needed days to get something like that done. In the current speed of the data, you can actually do that in a couple of seconds. But also for analyzing best solutions for certain illnesses, a lot of data is used all over the world, putting it together to make it easier to get to solutions for people. Artificial intelligence, I'm pretty sure you're going to talk about a topic like artificial intelligence in a couple of 2 days, I can imagine. But what I find interesting, I was reading a document in the US where they used artificial intelligence to do all the legal research. You can imagine if there is a big legal case going on, that you have all those legal people going through all those hundreds of thousands of documents, trying to figure out what is the best way to proceed this. And one of those legal institutions actually decided to do that by a robot, And the analysis or the effect of that was that it was actually a better result than it could have ever done by the humans. So that's definitely an area where things are going. Also new trends like facial or voice recognition. This is actually a real-life hotel in Tokyo, where you go in and you talk to a robot. And if you don't like a woman, you can also go to the dinosaurs. Difficult to see, but you can imagine that some children, it's actually pretty scary, but I can imagine some children really like to kind of check in with the dinosaur. But you can go over there, but you can imagine the first time you're there, you say your name, you see your face, they collect it. The second time you come there, they say, hey, nice to see you again, Mrs. Peek, because they recognize your voice, they recognize your face. And even if you come there again like half a year or maybe a year later, they still recognize you. Yeah? So it's actually kind of nice. And maybe also I don't know if you're going to talk about blockchain as well, but there's definitely a new upcoming, I think, very nice new technique, which is important for making sure that documents are actually digital documents, or digital documents are really trustworthy. Yes, like Bitcoin. I think most of you know what Bitcoin is one of the an example of blockchain technology. But the blockchain technology is actually something that you probably also will see and use when it comes to verification of documentation, digital documentations. And it can be disturbing because you don't need any intermediaries anymore. So it will change the banks, it will change a lot of legal people in the process. So it's going to be a disruptive technology. All these technologies will be disruptive, will change stuff, but I think in the end will all change the world for good. And for good in the sense that we will never go back to how it was, but also in the sense that it will enable us to reach more potential with our organizations where we're in if we adopt this. So, but before we can do that, there are 3 very important things that we need to make sure happens before we can do that. The first one is what we call IT. We need to think, all of us need to think on how do we make sure that our IT environment is actually able to adopt stuff like this. If you still have a lot of legacy, or you still have a lot of documentation in paper form, it's going to be difficult to actually do something with, for instance, robots. So it's important that we think about how do we make sure that the organizations we all work for are actually capable of adopting these new technologies and making sure that they go on the path of digital transformation. The second thing, we need to think about our people as well. It's not, I know here in the Netherlands, we had a lot of debates about the robots taking our lives or taking our work. Oh. So, yeah, so it's not always that everybody kind of embraces all those new techniques. So it's important that we make sure that we get our workforce in this as well. And secondly, for some people it's difficult. The digital transformation or the digital path we're on is not for everybody as obvious. So we need to make sure that we have the right people in place and that people are trained and know what to do with it. And last but not least, I already talked about security, cybersecurity. Don't underestimate stuff like that. Make sure that your data is protected. And the moment that you think nothing will happen to me, I can tell you definitely will. Because you've seen the big attempt last weekend. I don't think anybody has expected it to be so large, but it's going to be just the first that will happen. So very important to look at this. All right, so I hope you will have a very great day. And I'd like to hand over to...
Oh, next speaker.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. No, we don't. Thank you very much. We may have room for questions after Rosario has done her talk, so we are a little bit ahead of time, so that's no problem. I will change the sheets, and then Rosario can do the talk about design thinking. Thank you. It's a PDF, so if you want
PDF,
to, you have to use the
I will
arrow
write
keys
it.
to.
Can't I see it here?
It's only there. No, it's here. It's here on the big screen behind you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so hello everyone and good morning and thank you for inviting me, Wim. It is a pleasure to be in the Netherlands and to be here with you today. It's very interesting as I was listening to your talk. The connected car was a totally new idea for me. I will never forget that. And so.
I'm sorry, I want to put it full screen.
That's okay.
It didn't work.
So while my colleague focused more on the technology, I think we need to focus on people, because no technology exists without us. And I think that if we focus on people and their needs, technology and everything else, security, jobs, although there will be a huge part of the industrialized world population that will be out of jobs pretty soon, and everything else will follow. So I think we connect very nicely together. So when we think of the world today, we might have this weird image of a half human, half mechanical being, sort of a cyborg. Cyborgs are wonderful because they take us out of our realm of expectations and open lots of possibilities. And this is a good thing for me. this makes us feel as if we're at a crossroads. Where shall we go? Is technology good? Is it bad? It's precisely what you spoke about at the end of your talk. So I'm just picking up from there. The fact is that we have human abilities, our imagination, our ability to innovate, to create new things. This is uniquely human. And this enables us to constantly reinvent ourselves and reinvent solutions for the problems that constantly become probably more complex. They constantly crop up and probably become more complex. Whereas tools, and here we think about computers, we can think about a tractor, we can think about a robot. They become obsolete and ultimately end up in the scrapyard. My question here is, has anyone ever heard a robot laugh? Or you have? Okay. What about smile? Cry? Not there yet. They will be someday. But will they be capable of feeling the emotions that sometimes go through our bodies in milliseconds and even smaller than milliseconds, and which make us sometimes make hugely significant life decisions that change us, our environment, forever? I don't know. Maybe they'll get there. They're starting to have a language of their own, I hear. In Silicon Valley, computers are starting to create a language of their own. But it's something for them to understand, to be able to communicate each other. Will they understand each other? That's a totally different question. And then, is it important for us now to be concerned about such a future? I don't know. I have many unknowns, of course, which I feel is good. The thing that science and technology studies shows us is that, in fact, we have always been we are a co-creation. Ever since we started chipping stone and doing all that, we have evolved along with technology and tools, and they have evolved along with our ability to once again innovate and all of that. So it's always been, we create something new, it has good points and less positive aspects. The less positive aspects create problems, which we then, because we are such great people, great entities, solve, and it's just like that. Now we have huge problems, but then we know the whole world, basically, and we didn't in 400 centuries ago. Now, this is an example of co-creation. In the 17th century, Anton van you will forgive me because he is Dutch. Anton van Leeuwenhoek, okay, who was a scientist. He was the first person to design the red blood cells. Like this. Why? Because he had that microscope, which he developed. Today, we can see this. Because we have this EVO 18 research, with a Zeiss lens microscope. So it's interesting how what we know of the world is a direct result of the tools that we have. And so that first image of the woman, half cyborg, well, the cyborg woman makes a lot of sense. Now, we are hugely creative, and we normally talk about the fact that we can create data, which is unstructured information, with add information into knowledge. The thing is, data and information are outside us, and knowledge is a uniquely human construct. But wait, this doesn't look like it's human, right? There's nothing much human about this. This looks like the construct of a computer simulation, something like that. In fact, this is a view of data, of knowledge provided by data and information. Because, in fact, David Weinberger said, and I'm sorry, sometimes there's a little bit more text than would be good. He noticed that knowledge is messy. It's like us, it's messy. It's social, it's goal-driven, it is contextual, and it is culturally bound. Knowledge here develops in a different way than it develops in South Africa and in other places. And precisely because of the context, people have different goals, the environments, and the fact that it is bound to human cultures, which include technologies. You know, of course, that in Africa, people use cell phones as their primary means of communication. Now, to solve all this, I think that professionally, it is important to bring into the question, or to keep constantly in mind this triad, which is design thinking, service design, and information design. Why? Because design thinking provides us with an approach to solving problems. The approach is you get a lot of people from different backgrounds all together in the same place and get them to use their creativity, come up with the weirdest answers, possible solutions, whatever to the question. It's all good. There are no limitations. That's where you can get the most out-of-the-box thinking. So it's a great approach to solving any issue. Not quite, but almost. Okay, so keep in mind the design thinking. And then you broaden that and you have the service design. That is, bring it into organizations and try to provide the best, most memorable experience to your clients. And then finally, create the greatest looking outputs, which also have to be the outputs that actually work best for the type of clients that you are trying to target. And so if we keep these three things in mind, they form a whole, you'll be okay. You'll do okay. Of course, tools will always be there. Now, this is one way of talking about design thinking, because for all of these terms, there are expressions, there are multiple definitions. So the important thing here is wicked problems, so very, very complex and difficult to solve problems. Of course, they can be your own life. I mean, sometimes we do feel that we're at that stage where nothing in this world is comparable to whatever we're going through. It is a tough problem. And then the other thing is simple and innovative. Make it nice and simple. Don't make it complex. This is in the sequence of a lot of things that have been happening. Now the service design, it's as I said, creating the best solution, taking the clients through a whole user experience, memorable one, but which also benefits the company. And then the outputs, which is the information design, it has a lot to do with sense making. I'm just pointing out a few of these. Sense making is very critical, and it can do and undo things, because if the users need to make sense of what is being shown to them, and it doesn't make sense to them, because they came from a different culture or something like that, you're fried. Now, what do all these three methods have in common? And I just love the bikes here. I have never seen so many bicycles. Never seen so many. Really, I mean, this is, in Portugal, everyone, where I lived, everyone thinks that having a car is the greatest thing in the world. And it really doesn't make sense because Portugal is not Lisbon isn't that big. In the US, I can understand that. I mean, yeah, huge distances, but this I had never seen. It is amazing. And so in common, here you have bicycle riding, which is a fast, easy transportation way of transporting, going from place to place. Makes sense, right? It would make a lot of sense in Lisbon too. So in all of these, they have 4 things in common. One, which is problems. And we are facing huge problems. And I have this picture of the ocean, global warming. Everyone seems to say that we are at a tipping point. If we don't act right away, everything will be lost. But then I think back to the industrial age, London. And wow, you would never say that London went through what it did. The US used to be something like that. It's no longer, and then now we don't know what's going to happen again. Okay, so we have problems, and especially complex problems to deal with, and we need innovative solutions. We have people, which can be either thought of as users, regular users, or clients, depending on who you are. We have the point of view of the focus on producers and the production process. And here we need to have clear goals, clear communication, which is efficient. And we have solutions that we provide, which involve interaction and meaning. And do you know what this is? This is the, let me look here, the SS, so it's a ship that Brunel devised to cross the Atlantic. And here's just a tiny little tip of the design thinking. He didn't say, I want to build a better ship to take me to the other side of the Atlantic. No. He said, how can I get there fast? And that's the thing of design thinking. You don't say, I want a better kettle to boil water. You say, I need boiling water. Let's get everyone together and find a best way to boil water. It may not be a kettle. And that's what we need to face today's challenges. Now, what is unique about each of these aspects? Design thinking is radically user-centered in the sense of a very huge confusion of ideas, apparently. It models a more desirable state of affairs in the future. It's always trying to create a better future. Now, it's prototyping. Then we have the service design, which is, it is a continuation of design thinking, only applied actually in businesses for users, okay? Thinking of the whole user-client experience. And it needs to be good for clients and good for organizations. And then we have information design, where we bring together the design principles or graphic design principles. We need to think about the users, the context, and the purpose, and Kairos, which is the opportune moment. We have to create solutions for that moment, for now, okay, to solve today's problems. With this background, we can tackle any of these. And I sort of put these more human-centered and those which appear to be less human-centered. In the end, they mingle. It's just a matter of emphasis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosario. So very interesting. So if you are interested in the design thinking way of working, then Rosario will do a workshop tomorrow It's a 2.5 hour workshop, so you have some time to learn things about it. Are there any questions for Rosario or Janine, whatever?
My name is Rob calling from Canon Business and Information Services. The pre-assumption of your story is that our purpose in life is to solve challenges or problems. The other thing is, if you're looking at the cyborg, I think you read the book of Kurzweil, The Age of the Spiritual Machine, who explains exactly till the 21st century what will happen. So he also predicts all those things that are happening now. And even your cyber attack was solved by a 23-year-old guy who found that registering a website caused the whole thing to stop. My thing I want to say to you is, don't overestimate that people who have a problem, that we are going to solve, that if we are going to solve the problems they articulate, that's the right way to go forward. We will get into an age where a lot of people will have a lot of spare time. People are getting older, and there are also some, I read 2 days ago, there's now an accumulator, an electric car can be charged within 30 seconds. So it's only 3 years away from now. So it's not the question whether we have to live with technology or cyborgs, and also whether they will compete with our creativity, because they will. And it's not because I believe that, because we are putting all that we know into these machines. And those machines will not get tired. They will be more powerful. They will see patterns that we not can see because of our limitations. And I'm not the one who is advocating technology. We have to use it. But I think we should carefully watch out to think that we only have to solve the problems of our clients, because that could be the wrong path, the wrong direction.
Okay, any comments on that?
Would you like to? Well,
Keep it short.
this is not about the clients. First, problems are what you consider to be a problem. They're human constructs. So what can be a problem for you is not a problem for me, and vice versa. And so, and we are not here to solve only the problems of users. Users can be a company which is going through a hard, a tough, part of its development. And that's when we need creativity. I think what will make technology is extremely powerful. I teach lots of students from CS, and they sort of give up on that. They say they will overtake us and all that. And I say, only if you allow them to, only if you rest and you do not use your creativity, then they will not be able to overcome you. Well, that's what we can say now. I don't know what life will be like in 50 years. I hope this helped answer your question.
Okay, creativity is very important. Any other comments or question at this moment? There's one over there. For Ray. You keep it short, Ray.
Well, just a follow-up comment. I look at my own 23-year-old daughter. When she was a teenager, she was putting photos up on a photo blog and doing things that we, her parents, considered to be irresponsible given her age and naivete. Now, as a young adult, she completely eradicated her Facebook account. What I mean by that illustration is, and I don't think she's unique in this, young kids who started out not caring about their privacy have suddenly become very concerned with it. And what I see is the so-called millennial generation and younger are, contrary to what many people believe, expressing a need for the companies in which they work to do good, besides make money, and for some sort of humanistic approach to all the technology, the social networks, and so on. Where that's going to take us, where that's going to go, I can't say. I don't think any of us can. But I do think that there is this movement that at the same time that we are developing all this advanced technology, there is also a movement to develop these humanistic qualities that Rosario was talking about.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on that?
I would just like to add, my CS students say, and the university, New Mexico Tech, is working in cybersecurity and training lots of masters and PhD students in in cybersecurity, and they say, don't buy a computer, and if you buy a computer, don't use it. Same with a cell phone. That's the only way to be safe. Absolutely.
That's good news for Janine. Yeah.
Then you run over by a truck when you're outside. So
Absolutely. Also.
I think what is interesting about that is that I think what you're illustrating is that we as human people adapt. So my children are not using Facebook anymore. It's old-fashioned. So they use Snapchat or whatever other stuff. So it's interesting to watch young children develop, because whatever they are doing is something that we need to get adjusted to as well, also in the work environment. And so my children never send email. I'm addicted to email. So there's still some bridge difference between us. So I think that one of the things that illustrates that is mainly is that new technologies pop up. We use it. Some of those technologies will be lasting longer than others, but we see a follow-up of new things happening much more faster than it used to be in the past. And that's something I think that is, and we have the choice to do or use stuff or not.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just looking at the audience, and I can see a lot of middle-aged people. So there are not so many young people at this moment driving, but there are some young people in the back. I don't know. Do you have any comments on this? Not yet. Okay, we'll talk about that later. Anyway, so any more questions at this moment? No comments? Okay, I want to thank you very much. So we go for a short break, a 20-minute break, and then we'll be back here again with Stefan Fredrickson and David White. Thank you. Get started. So the content automation show. No, it's all. Let's get started again, please. Break is over. Hello. Are you ready for the next session? Just an announcement from those of you who didn't discover it yet. On the back side of this day schedule, on the back side, on the bottom, there's the Wi-Fi code. So if you are looking desperately for the Wi-Fi code, it's on the back side of your daily schedule, on the bottom. So the network is seats to meet, and the password is just below it. So, and for those who forgot, it's also on those signs everywhere in the building. So if you forget it, you just look for a sign like this, and you can find the Wi-Fi code again. And the hashtag was IEN 2017. For those who forgot. Okay, thank you. We continue our schedule now. I'm sorry, we're a bit late because I forgot the timing. We have a talk, David White of Quark. He will introduce himself. And the next talk will be by Stefan Fredriksen of Data Exchange from Denmark. So now I give the stage to David. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So content automation, quick background introduction for folks who don't know me. I've been in the content space for over 20 years now. I started at a company called Arbortext. Folks who know Arbortext? Yeah, lots of folks here, lots of TechPubs and Data folks. So I worked at Arbortext for about 13 years, including a couple years after the acquisition. Spent a lot of time, I know lots of folks here are Data focused and Data backgrounds. Spent a lot of time with IBM before Data even became a standard at Oasis, implementing Data within the Arbortext architecture. Played a lot of roles there, mostly around product strategy and integration, did a lot of work around component content management and so forth. So at that time, it was our vision that we would take that methodology, the structured authoring to automated publishing, outside of the technical environment, outside of TechPubs, and started making some moves in that direction. And in fact, the folks that know that company will know and remember that right before we got acquired by PTC, we acquired 3B2 technology as a publishing engine. That was really the first step in several steps that we wanted to take to get to the point where we had the right tools to provide the same system, easier usability and higher fidelity publishing capabilities outside of that space. PTC came along and acquired the company, decided it really wasn't in their interest, didn't align with their goals to focus outside of TechPubs, and they have subsequently, while they have grown that business significantly over the years, have stayed focused in that space. Our CEO at the time, Ray Schiavone, had been approached by Quark after the acquisition by PTC to take on Quark, and we had a long discussion about whether that was the right move, and the idea that this was one of the few places in the world that had a publishing engine that could possibly acquire the capabilities to support high fidelity publishing. More graphical, more marketing and collateral oriented is a reasonable way to describe it, outside of that space. And so he took on the idea of bringing to Quark an enterprise business focused on that methodology. I joined a couple years later, year and a half later or so, and we've been working on that for about 8 years now. So I'm the CTO of Quark, been there for 8 years, a little over 8 years, and we've been developing this methodology of easier tools to use for non-technical authors, publishing engine with automation for the ability to deliver content that's, really completely encompassing the capabilities of manual layout, but through an automation process. And in the last couple of years, we've been developing the language to describe this to folks who don't come from the XML and technical and data environments and so forth. And we've landed on content automation, which seems to be sticking well. So I want to give you a little background on how we think about it and where we think the market is headed. So we've been working now, this is the second year we just completed, and we're about to, I think it's actually available, and we'll provide some information and links on our follow-up message on how to get to it. But we've been working with InfoTrends for 2 years now on a survey related to content processes. So how does your business, how does your enterprise deal with content? What do they do with content? What are their pain points, et cetera? And this has been a consistent number. Last year it was, I think it was about the same. It was maybe a few percentage points difference. But the primary factor that is driving people to change their behavior, to buy new tools, to change their processes, et cetera, has been customer satisfaction. So it isn't related to necessarily, you know, as you can see, 20%, 26%, you know, performance in terms of costs, the ability to increase revenue. All those things are a factor and valuable, but really the thing that's driving their behavior that they want to improve on is customer satisfaction. That's probably not a surprise to anybody in the room, except for maybe the fact that it's actually a shared vision for all of them, for most folks. More importantly is that everyone agrees, 95% of the people rated very highly, that delivering a good customer experience, which includes everything from how do I know about you to how do I know whether I want to buy your product or service, whether I want to do my business with you, comes down to good customer experience, being able to drive customer experience. And related to that, all of us, me included, I don't really want to talk to anybody unless there's no other way to get the answer, right? I mean, I think the vast majority, and we were talking about the younger generation, I think the vast majority of folks, if they can self-service, they'll be happier. And how they self-service is through the web, through digital means, and how they want to do that and growing the way they do that is through mobile devices and mobile phones in particular. So the driver, 2/3, 85%, everyone agrees that the content has to be engaging. It probably should be interactive in some level, and it needs to be web and mobile enabled in the best possible way, right? No, and I'm adamant that does not mean you have a great website and what you end up with is a PDF. That's a really awful result, especially on a mobile phone. Nobody reads PDFs on their mobile phone if they can avoid it. This is a 1-year trend from a company called StatCounter on the consumption of web content from a device. So if you go to StatCounter, it's a great tool. It's a fantastic tool for being able to figure out, you know, sort of all kinds of different slices of data about web content consumption. This particular slice shows the amount of content served up by the web to a device, whether it's a desktop, Mac or Windows most typically, Linux possibly, a tablet, which is that bottom purple line there that's reasonably flat, which makes sense, versus mobile phones. And you can see in about September through November of last year, worldwide was the crossover point, where more web content was consumed on a mobile phone than is consumed on a desktop, and certainly consumed on a tablet. That's really, really important, like really important. If that's not driving your behaviors, if that's not driving your company behavior in terms of digitization of the enterprise, then you're missing the point, particularly generationally. And that's a little harder statistic to grab onto. Nobody actually knows how old a browser user is if they're using generically accessing the web. But other types of measurements and surveys and so forth say, yeah, the next couple of generations are fully phone enabled. They are using the phone for almost everything. My own behavior, I'm 51 years old, proud to say, is I probably do about 70% of my browsing on my phone. I probably do about 20% on my tablet, and the rest is on my desktop. And usually as desktop, it's related to work functions. It's because that's the only way I can access them. That's going to continue. So if you look at the rest of the regions, you know, a little bit of difference across the regions, but generally all trending in the same direction. Absolutely all trending in the same direction. So India, 70% of the content served up by the web is now delivered to a mobile phone. Well, what type of content? What is business content? What does business content mean? And we think of it, and I've been talking with our head of marketing, Gavin Drake, a while now about how to parse out the divisions of content, how businesses think about it, how we think about it. And I started describing. I started with, because my TechBuzz background, non-technical content. And I hate that. I hate starting with a negative. It's not something. Well, what is it? Well, it's not something. So how do I describe it? Well, it's content you sell, content that helps you sell, content that helps you drive your business, or content that supports your customers. Those are really the four categories as we think about them. So on a matrix here, from commercial to operations, from delivering to support. From the survey, from the customers who filled out the survey, and again, we'll make it available. There'll be a sign up, access to the web through InfoTrends or through the Quark website. To give you a sense of the numbers, again, all that detail is in the actual formal report, and didn't have a ton of time to spend on that level. But this is companies 500 employees and up, so mid-size, large, and really large enterprises. So 500 up, we kind of cut off there and said we don't really, below that. The numbers can be overwhelmed by individuals. So how do they think about their content? What is the content they're most interested in? What's business critical to the people who were filling out that survey? Technical documentation, training materials, customer communications are the top three. Well, that makes sense. A whole bunch of our audience is focused on solving those problems. But more interesting is product data sheets, which is on the sell side, marketing side, collateral side, standard operating procedures, which is on the business support side, policies and procedures, similarly, maybe technical, maybe not technical, marketing intelligence, sales enablement, collateral, etc. And if you broke those down into the individual quadrants, it's fairly equal, not by percentages of respondents, but by the number of the top 14 in that list, the things that were close to 10% or above. So they're starting at 9%. So fairly even breakdown in those four quadrants of what is critical information. What do we think as the folks who filled out the survey is critical to our business? Another really interesting question, and one that I'm very satisfied by understanding better, and is very helpful to me in my own way of thinking about it, is what is the number of people who participate in creating that critical content? And it averages 10. So from a low of 2 to 4 to a high of 20 plus. We do a lot of work in investment research, for example, for financial services and banks, helping them develop investment research documents, which, fairly complex documents, lots of tables and charts, lots of different pieces, and the process is really complex. If you take somebody like a Goldman Sachs as an example, as a bank, not only do they provide investment research on the trade side of their business, they also invest in companies. They also manage the process of selling companies to other companies. And of course, because of the walls required by regulation between those different business units, when they release a research report, there is a process where that research report goes into a black hole. It goes into a clearinghouse. And that clearinghouse has to make a decision as to whether you can make these statements or not based on the rest of their business. What else is going on in other parts of the business? So they have this nice isolated little clearinghouse. It's a pretty complex process overall, including just development of the content to begin with. So really, really interesting that it takes a company. I mean, one of the questions we didn't put on the survey this year that I'd like to get on next year is how many departments are involved in that? Certainly in some of those examples in things like, technical publications is at least 3, right? There's product management, there's engineering, and there's the actual TechPubs group itself. So there's at least 3 involved in that process. In investment research, there's about 3 to 4, and if they're a complex company, a big global bank, then there's probably more like 6 different business units that are involved in either the management of the data that feeds that document, the development of that document, or the clearing of that document. Legal being another example, managing disclosures and disclaimers. So how does that work today, and where is it headed? So we think it has to head to content automation. Whatever you want to call it, we've decided to call it content automation. I think it's a great phrase. It's starting to stick for us. I think it's meaningful, it's simple, it's direct. It says you have to bring more automation, not just to, for example, the ability to take a structured document and deliver it in multi-format. That's really powerful and useful and has a lot of value. but in every stage of the process. So in the investment research example, the ability, I mean, their current process is very word-driven. Almost everybody in investment research is very word-driven. Financial analysts who are not high-tech people, they're data guys, right? They think about data. They're super smart about data. They know about markets. So they're certainly not dumb people, right? They are very intellectual and intelligent. But their knowledge of software usage, for example, is really dependent on their age. Really dependent, let me say it again, it's really dependent on their age. The older a financial analyst is, right? I got a big grin and a nod over there. The older a financial analyst is, the more likely that they'll be higher in the company. So that's just a function of, as you get experience, you get promoted. You also get more customers. More customers depend on you if you're successful and good at what you do. But ultimately, you have to be able to convert their experience and keep it familiar into something that allows them to support automation. So for us, that means the ability to automate even the startup template that they use for authoring. What are you doing? Well, I'm writing about a stock. What kind of document are you writing? I'm writing about a pre-announcement on their investments, on their financial results. Oh, okay, what sector is it in? What stock is it? From that information, we can then assemble all of the things that are necessary, all the charts and graphs, the historic data, the past data, the previous opinion. All of that stuff can be assembled into a document for which they just have to write the actual pieces that they're responsible for. Whereas before, they would copy and paste everything from the previous document. Literally, not say open and edit a new version. They don't think of it as a new version. This is a different document. It's a different quarter, it's a different document. So they would literally cut and paste that stuff. So that's what we mean by end-to-end automation within the content process. Again, back to the survey. What is those digital transformation initiatives? Again, in the context of content, but improving intranet and portal content for consumption by employees. It's one of the biggest ones. But you can see a high number of respondents picked multiple categories within this. Reducing reliance on paper, moving content online, taking content mobile. It's all digitization. It's just a different way of saying digitization. Right? How do we support those initiatives to move forward? So we think that means in order to succeed, and we've seen this wildly successful in the TechPubs market and related markets, education a little bit, but things related to TechPubs have been wildly successful at deploying a content automation strategy, which really says it's not about files, it's not about document management and file management, it's about the content. And file management, which is nice, metadata, which is nice, is not enough if it's just at a monolithic level of granularity. It needs to be componentized, it needs to be smart information. And then again, applying automation once you have those smarts to everything. So for us, it's about moving from documents to content and from monolithic static documents with a lot of copy and paste or rewriting or recreation into reusable components, single source of truth of content, and making sure that those things are all related so that if a piece of content gets updated, all the documents associated with that piece of content can be updated, or not, depending on the business rules that you need to apply. It's also about embedding knowledge, not formatting. Who is the audience? I mean, a very common problem again, I'll stick with one example just to keep the talk brief. In investment research, they have public versions of content, they have subscribed versions of content, they have rules about the disclosures that have to go into that content, and being able to capture that, they have headlines that they want to send off to Twitter that says, hey, we've just released our new report on sector Y. Automating that process so that the approval is all one flow, and that the automation of, I want to output my Twitter, I want to output my email, I want to output my PDF and my digital versions of the full report, I need a public version and I need a subscriber version of that. That's all about the metadata of the audience, right? Things that we've done in TechPubs world for quite a while. So it's about embedding that format, the knowledge instead of the formatting. And then once you've got all that knowledge, you can use that with a rules engine and a formatting engine to be able to output content. And for us, we're very, very focused on the idea of, yes, okay, you may likely need paper and print. Of course, we've got one of the best engines in the world for doing that. But really, it's about responsive HTML. Omnichannel, our VP of engineering said it really well. Omnichannel means print and HTML everywhere else. And so that's how we think about it. So being able to deliver a responsive document that's interactive, that has capabilities that allow you to say, you know what, there's a fork in my content. Let me back that up again. There's a fork in my content. I have 4 parallel concepts, but most people who are reading this document only need one. Well, don't hyperlink me, because that's a point of distraction. Don't make me scroll through a bunch of information that's irrelevant to me. But if you can't know what my choice is, then make it easy for me to do in an interactive way. The tools are there. It's really quite simple to be able to present those great UXs. Flatten that in experience for the users. So that's what content automation means for us, and I'll just get this thing built here fully, is every stage of that life cycle, and ultimately now with the ability to automate based on business rules, what kind of things go into the HTML that gets presented so that those can trigger the kind of analytics that you want captured, is really another way. Nobody can afford to do this in a Word document handing it to a webmaster who's going to reformat that and then embed a bunch of stuff in it and then hook it up to their JavaScript. Nobody can afford that process. So they're business critical documents, the things that allow people to make decisions and take actions, which right now are wrapped up in PDF and navigable and searchable, but certainly not easy to use from a mobile perspective, if even a desktop perspective, is pretty crucial. So nobody says I need content automation. We hope we get to that point. We hope the market gets that excited and there's an opportunity where people start to raise their hand and say, I get this, I understand the concept, and I want some. But for now, these are the types of things that they ask. And mostly it's about digitization. Mostly it's about digitization, somewhat about process. Recreating content, you can't enter new markets, cost of localization, keeping track of what's going on, analytics, and being able to get to mobile. And for those who want to make a pitch to the business that says, actually, we should pay attention to this. This is actually the way we have to go. We cannot deliver PDFs to mobile anymore. We have to stop doing that, as one example of a business case driver. There are lots of ROI, right? There's lots of ability. From research after research, 40 to 70% of savings in translation based on modularization of the content and only sending out the modules that have been updated, as opposed to every document, as well as paying for the reformatting of that content. If you can automate the formatting, you don't have to pay for somebody to reformat that content, which slows you down and costs more money. 30 to 80% productivity savings for subject matter experts. If they're embedding their knowledge as opposed to formatting the content, the company gains and the employee gains. Again, a simple example, investment research are one of our customers. It's anecdotal. They haven't really formally measured it, but their financial analysts have stated consistently, I'm in and out of the tool in half the time I used to be. 50% savings in their effort. When they're not writing full-time, when that's a part of what they do. Designers become template designers instead of manual formatters. Reduction to market is rapidly increased. And last is, well, what type of documents? So the things we see, I think there's lots. We haven't even touched healthcare, for example. There's tons in healthcare. SOPs would be a good example in healthcare where we haven't even begun to impact the market. But data sheets, product data sheets, fairly complex things. Fund marketing, we do a lot in procedures and SOPs. Investment research, I've mentioned several times. Certainly TechPubs is still growing in this space and leveraging of that technology, as well as government. So we have a booklet back there for content automation that gives that we worked on with Wiley, Content Automation for Dummies. We also have some starter guides. We have a schema we call Smart Content that we try to apply to this that's closer to HTML5 than it is to DITA, but it uses a lot of DITA content capabilities. And that is 1 minute and 30 seconds over. That's pretty good.
Wow. It sure was a lot of information. For those interested, this afternoon we have another session with Dave, and tomorrow we have also 2 more sessions about content automation where we can talk further about this subject. So now we can have to change screen and we go to...
While you do that, I'm going to connect to one of our previous speakers who talked a lot about cyborgs. Because...
Are you a cyborg?
Partly. That's exactly it, Dave.
That's the question.
Because I have a full metal knee, and in 2 weeks I'm going to get a full metal shoulder. I used to play a lot of handball. So the joke in my family is that once I die and the urn is handed over to my wife, she'll go, "What is this?" That's the joke, and that's the favorite joke in my family at the moment. So I felt it was deeply touching to hear about cyborgs. Okay, let's talk about feeding the bot. Why talk about it at all? Well, here's an experience. It links directly to Dave's story about customer satisfaction. I was driving with my colleague. He had a brand new Volkswagen Passat. He needed to change oil for some. That was a little bit of, he got the car 2 months ago and the oil sign came on. So, okay, we looked for the manual to figure out what kind of oil he needed. We found the manual. Inside 5 minutes, we found a table describing what kind of oil we should put on the car. It depended on one type of motor, of engine he had in the car. And to figure that out, we had to open the bonnet and take away the plastic shield over the engine. That is enough that I will never buy a Volkswagen. It was absolutely outrageously awful that you had to, just to get that information. What it should have been, push a button on the steering wheel, ask what type of oil do I need on my engine, and get the answer right there and there. That's why bots can be a great idea. So that's just getting started. Okay, I'm going to run through the history of content in 6 or 7 episodes. We'll see about that. This is the starting point. Knowledge transfer is happening right in this place and in this moment. The baby chimpanzee is looking very carefully what mom is doing with these tools, cracking a nut. But that's the point. Knowledge transfer in this world is limited to one time and one place, and knowledge moves very, very slowly. Okay, next step. These are Norwegian monks getting instructions on how to use a book. There's a wonderful video on that on YouTube, by the way. How many of you have seen that video? You know it? He's asking, now it's closed and I still have my text is still preserved inside the book. And he goes, yes, you'll be okay. Now, that was a revolution. Why? Because it allowed us to move knowledge across space and time in a much more efficient way than what you see the chimpanzees had going on. So that's the second image. The next one is when C# came out as a programming language. I read the C# manual from Microsoft from page 1 to page 678. The thought of my son doing anything that stupid is completely outrageous. His span of attention is 27 lines, provided that there's a very nice picture included in those. That's it. So nobody wants to read a reference volume from the one end to the other anymore at all. So that was the end of the book. I think 2008, the reference book. Note. 2008 is a bit early, but never mind. Now we went on from the book, we went to the portals. This is very, very blurry because it's something we did for an actual customer. And it's a very fancy portal with lots of facets. You can do sophisticated search. And I think we managed to make it understandable to approximately 5% of the customers, of the users of this portal, by making it very sophisticated. So it worked really well for the 5% who actually could figure out how to use this stuff. Your companies might be different, your users might be different, but I sincerely doubt it. Okay, that was the next stage. So here's the call center. Well, the call center is something else, of course. We had a customer has a call center with 4,000, or call centers with 4,000 employees. And I was at an actual demonstration with a live customer calling in. And after 10 minutes, the call center employee gave up finding the content needed to answer the question from the customer. It got escalated to a specialist center who spent another 10 minutes looking for an answer, still without finding it. And then the customer hung up. And the entire company management was looking at this call center employee and following the entire process, and they decided, we have a huge problem. So that was the next step. And here's the next step in the history of content: chatbots replacing the call center employees to be helpful to people by making it easier for you and for the user to get a response to your questions here and now. Or that's what they're supposed to be. Okay. So now that we have these chatbots and the chatbot technologies, how do we feed them? A chatbot without content is like a Danish politician being interviewed on television. Long on words, short on knowledge. So that's a horrible thing. I don't know, it's probably different in your country, maybe not. Maybe it isn't. At any rate, a chatbot to be worth anything at all needs content. So how do we feed it? Okay, some people would claim, probably with a lot of good reasons, that the complete works of William Shakespeare contains almost any answer to any question in life that you would come up with. Might be right. If you fed a chatbot the collected works of William Shakespeare, you would need a certain training period before you got out any answer to any question. And you might end up with the answer 42 or something like that. Who knows? We don't know. Nobody has tried this. On the other hand, here's back to Lego, because I'm from Denmark. If we feed it, and that's what I'm going to be talking about, modular, structured, enriched content, we might get faster and different results. But first of all, I think this is also what Rosario talked about. We have to go back to the actual user and take their perspective. Who needs the information? And the guy is sitting there and he's saying, I just need one answer and I need it right here and right now, which is very much in line with the results that Dave was showing before. So the starting point and the end point needs to be the people who actually need the content, need the information, need the knowledge on what to do. So in my mind, this is about organizing content with a reader perspective, with a user perspective. Let's not say reader, because it could be that it was, it had voice technology involved, so it doesn't have to be a reader, but it needs to be organized around the needs for content for the user of the content, for the one with a need. Open data, or basically information mapping, which is at the origin of a lot of the data stuff, is where you need to look. Robert Horn in 1968 to 72 did research where he came out with the result that there were fundamentally 6 purposes of content for the users. These were universal, as long as we are not talking about love letters, poems, and marketing literature. But as soon as you talked about content where you wanted to transfer information and knowledge from one person to another, not the emotions, but the other part, then these were the 6 fundamental questions. How do I do something? How does something work? What is this and this? What are the rules? What are the data facts? What are the parts and functions? And he called this, or we call this, the one question, one answer, one topic method of organizing your content. You could call, instead of topic, use the word component if you prefer that. So Bob Horn actually called this task content, process content, concept content, rule content, fact and structure content. For a young chatbot, this is actually pretty much information. So you might want to simplify it down to this. If you get started, two things basically. I want to do something, how should I do it? Or I want to know something, how do I get to know this and that? These Lego blocks, these content components, these content modules, these topics, if organized, as I just said, would have a purpose. They would have a purpose for the user, for the end user. They would have metadata and they would have content. In some cases, the content would be deeply tagged, as Dave also mentioned. There's a need for, in some cases at least, for deeply tagging the content. In other cases, if the components are small enough, there might not be a need for that. So, what does this have to do with the chatbots? So here's a chatbot. It could be Watson, IBM Watson, or it could be LUIS, Microsoft LUIS, Azure LUIS, Microsoft chatbot service. And chatbots need to know basically three things. They need to figure out what's the intent of the person chatting with them. That's one thing. Second, what are the entities? What is he talking about? And the third thing is then a crafted dialogue, which I would divide in two parts. There's an exploratory dialogue, figuring out what's he talking about, what is it they need, what is it she wants. And the second one, providing an answer. So here's the big model for this, for feeding a chatbot. If you have the content on one line, and if you have the chatbot on the other line, the big model here is that if you have content components that are significantly enriched with tagging, metadata, and organized by content for the reader, user, then that matches the chatbots that needs to know about intent, entities, and attributes, and the crafted dialogue, where in actual fact, if you are successful, you can plug in your topic content, you can reuse that as the answer part of a chatbot dialogue. This is a huge step in turning content components into something that you can reuse in a chatbot environment. And it's a even bigger step in making sure that you can actually manage the maintenance of this content. Because if you just let your chatbot folks go ahead and do their programming, you could end up with maintenance hell on the content. It would take 3 months or 4 months, but you would go there. So let's have a look at it. I won't be showing a live example because I have a friend here, I'll mention later, Radu Tut, who's sitting down there, will be doing a live demonstration of this technology tomorrow. So I'll just be showing you a couple of screenshots. This is inside our product, this is inside Office 365 running SharePoint Online with an IBM Watson implementation directly plugged into Office 365, where I asked the question, how can I open a Smart Save account? I'm sorry, the ugly name is my invention, but I thought it had a good ring to it to illustrate what's going on in a financial company. And there you got the answer, how to open a Smart Save account. You do this, this, and this. So there's a short response, which is actually a standard topic, pretty big one even. One of the interesting things is you could actually say, do it for me. That means you can take it one step further and say, okay, I can read it, but obviously you, Mr. Chatbot, actually knows what to do, so why should I care about doing it You know all the steps. Why won't you do it instead, so I don't have to bother with this? You might even know my name. If I'm in a financial services company, I'm in their portal site, you might know my name. You could definitely figure out my account number. Otherwise, you can ask Google and get the missing information. So you know a lot, and actually, you probably have all the information you need, so why don't you go and do it? What we're showing there is actually a fairly standard docx document, but for this case, could have been an XML document as well. Doesn't really matter. It's the organization of the content, and provided that we have the tagging needed, that can do the job. So, the next step, of course, is that the bots will be producing content for the bots. Now, the good thing about this is that we have found that maybe because bots are modeled and artificial intelligence is modeled on the way we work with content, they actually work pretty much the same. So if the content works well for a human being, lo and behold, it actually works well for an automated process too, because then a bot will find it easier to translate. So that's the next thing, is that why, you could bypass quite a few steps here and actually have the bot create the content and a bot analyze the content. In the pharmaceutical business, this is exactly what's happening. Patient narratives is an example where most of the content is being created, or all the companies are working on automating the generation of patient narratives, as they are called, by putting in the content automatically. And in the other end, you've got FDA and other authorities that are actually tearing it apart and having automated processes analyze the data. So there's a bot on both ends of the data. So it's almost like an incidental thing that there's a review and approval process with human beings in between. Or it's not an incidental process, it's an important thing. So that's it. That's the takeaway message. You've got superfood for you, for growing your creative sense, etc. And you've got superfood for your bot. And they're both good for each their purpose. And that's it. Just see more of our chatbot tomorrow. Radu will be showing how it actually works, 15:30, 15:50. So let's do that. I didn't introduce myself because I'll let you choose here at the end. Okay.
Introduce yourself. Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan.
Okay.
So, very interesting. Content automation and bots.
Yeah.
We're a little bit behind schedule at the moment, but I still, if someone has a quick question to one of those gentlemen, there's one over there, and keep it short, please.
Well, my question is for the first gentleman and his weird and wonderful content automated creation cycle thingy.
Yeah.
What was missing for me in that cycle was all the work involved in setting it up, the configuration, and that's non-trivial. So I think it's a bit cheeky to leave it.
Come see my ad. So yeah, absolutely agree, right? 20 minutes is not a lot of time to try to cover everything, right? I have specifically agree with you, and I absolutely agree. And in fact, I've had a couple conversations already this morning. On top of the challenge of making the tools better for the users, there has to be better tools for the enterprise to configure and execute. Absolutely agree. Most crucial.
Okay, great. So this afternoon you can talk further with David, or in the break this afternoon. I think we'll continue. Just one very quick question, please.
Yeah, for Mr. Frederiksen, you should really try the HoloLens from Microsoft, because that's the first thing on the market where you have a really multimodal interface. You can talk, you have gestures, you have all the things that humans use. And we are at the moment developing AR maintenance, augmented reality maintenance, to speed up this service process with more than 50%.
Yeah, I will. We've been talking with Microsoft this spring, actually, about using their technologies, but in a new way.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So if you want to have more questions, just grab to the guys in the lunch break.
Yeah.
I think I propose a really very short break now, maybe 1 minute. You can grab one of the yogurts that's put behind you, and then we come back for the next sessions,
Thank you.
because we are 10 minutes behind and we don't want to skip lunch today. Thanks. Where's the technical? Okay. Okay. If you have all grabbed your yogurt or coffee, we continue to schedule the program now. We have 4 speakers coming up. We have Thank you. Please be seated. It's all finished. Huh?
Hello, everyone. I would like to take a few minutes of your time to share a story. Thank you. It feels kind of weird to hold a microphone, actually. My name is Willemijn Snijder, and I am one of the proud founders of a startup called Swipe Guide. And we've been invited here today to tell you a story about our startup. It has been about 1.5 years ago that I met my co-founder, Daan Asse, at an event from the Dutch Marketing Institute here in the Netherlands. We got talking, and he shared with me his expertise on instructional design and his passion for tech development, but also an idea he had about an app that people could use to make and share how-tos with each other, and about the fact that this app was actually sitting on a shelf collecting dust because it, well, so to speak, lacked kind of the right product market fit. And at the time I was still working as a head of marketing, facing the challenges of a multi-channel customer experience every day. And a few days later, while I was processing our conversation, really inspired by Daan, it kind of just hit me, you know, as a marketeer, that in this digital age, with all those multi-channel touchpoints we can use, what still is the current customer journey with many consumer products today? Well, it kind of goes like this. You have a lot of books, you buy a bookshelf, or you buy that coffee machine you've had your eye on for months. And what do you take out of the box? Right, the first thing you get is a hopelessly, in my personal opinion, outdated, old-fashioned user manual, printed in 8 different languages that never answers the questions that you have. So what do customers do with that? I talked to 20 of them yesterday again. They throw them away, and when you're lucky, they put them on a shelf. And when they have a problem, they Google themselves blue in the face until they have that same manual, as Dave said, in a non-searchable PDF. So our insight is that over 50% of those manuals and instructions are currently ineffective. And bad instructions, they lead to customer questions, to calls, to emails, to product returns, to a negative customer experience. So to say, to a lot of costs. So we started researching this topic. And we actually found that over 50% of the, how do I work this? Yes. Right. So that over 50% of the post-purchase experience is actually related to bad instructions. Something we discover and prove with our launching customers in every use case that we do. They're actually struggling on a day-to-day basis with creating FAQs, creating product videos, creating support calls to reduce those after-sales contact. There's another observation that we made, and there's that product engineers and technical writers, well, they just love to talk about everything a product can do and all the features and functionalities that it has. And the product marketeer of that product, well, they just want to show and tell how great their product really is. But what does a customer want? That is actually very simple. When I buy a coffee machine, I just want to get that first cup of coffee. I want to organize my room so the books are away. And I want to do that in the easiest and quickest way possible. And while I'm doing that, I would really like to be assured that whatever I'm doing, I'm okay. I'm a hero because I can do it myself. So we decided to experiment and build a proof of concept that takes an outside-in approach to instructional design and focuses 100% on the user. Their needs, their insights are at the core of our development as a startup. In every single step, we ask ourselves, how does this create value for our customers, the manufacturers of products, and how does it create value for their customers? Second, we decided to focus on delivering a solution that plugs into the customer experience technology landscape of our customers. Create a technology that actually focuses on preventing product returns instead of solving issues around them when they arise. And so SwipeGuide came to life, a cloud software application that enables companies to create interactive and visual step-by-step instructions that are published instantly to mobile devices. And those mobile apps, they support end users in executing tasks that are new or complex. How does that work? Well, with our mobile app, a consumer gets to the right guide in just 3 clicks from any device. And the interaction design that we have, combined with a minimalistic and visual approach to instruction making, makes sure that consumers are actually more successful with their product. And then we challenge ourselves to create a journey with our product for that product marketer that is as simple and as intuitive as the experience we create for consumers with our mobile app. So our customers have with one click, you have your own customizable cloud platform with clear authorizations and workflow, a very simple drag and drop approach to creating step-by-step instructions that you can publish instantly to your own mobile app. But you can also share them through any social media or activate them with a QR code or NFC code, which is then generated automatically for every visual user guide that you create. Well, how does that create a better instruction? Well, we kind of gave ourselves quite a challenge. We want to automate the instruction design process as far and as best as we can. We are working with software engineers and students, and we want to build features that translate minimalistic instructional design principles to machine learning and pattern recognition algorithms in our software. So anyone, especially that product marketer, can create a better instruction. Well, we currently work with a few launching customers, and with them we've taken the idea to a working beta that runs with consumers in various markets and countries. We are measuring the usage, creation, effectiveness of the visual user guides they create. And those insights help us to unravel every hypothesis about the business model we should follow. And with those insights, we aim to launch this summer with 3 simple software subscriptions. Our sole purpose of our startup is to simplify the world by making any new task easier to do. And in the now, we focus on creating value in the current world, but we're also looking ahead at the future of instructions with mixed reality. So in the near future, this probably is the interface that we'll be working with. I think someone already mentioned it, the HoloLens. In any case, we focus on a customer, because a happier customer that has a better onboarding, that has a better product experience, just costs less money and spends more, and thus creates value for our customer. We would like to invite everyone in the room to join us on a discussion about the instruction journey and an outside-in approach to instruction making with my co-founder Dan at 2 in the afternoon. And meanwhile, of course, I take the opportunity to also invite everyone to sign up as a test user on www.theinstructionjourney.com, because we would love any feedback. Thank you.
Some of you have been interviewed by us in the last year, and I'm really happy to get this opportunity today to tell you about the results of the interviews. It is about component content management systems, and we have already heard a lot about that this morning. We have been interviewing you. Well, it's not only me, it's Lu Yao, a master student of mine, interviewed 37 technical writers. And I was also involved in that project. I'm Joyce Karreman from the University of Twente, and we did this project because I'm not a specialist in component content management systems, but Peter van Bart and Jelte Meijer are. They are from Eluxis. So we did this project with the 4 of us, and we were interested in this. Component content management systems, is that a threat to technical writers? Because we've heard a lot about the advantages of those systems, but what we read in the literature, I'm clicking and clicking, well, really bad in this kind of things. Yes, so you all know better what a component content management system is than I. We've heard about that this morning. We've heard about the advantages. I've summarized them here. So the advantages, I think, are clear for component content management systems. It's easier to reuse. There are lots of advantages of single sourcing. It fits better with the customer's needs because it's really easy to create lots of different documents that exactly answer the customer's needs. So there are a lot of advantages of those systems. But there may also be some downsides. And what I've been reading in the academic literature, because I'm not working myself with component content management systems, what we read in the academic literature when we want to teach our students about those systems and about the theories behind them, what we read is lots of worries. What the academic literature says is that it can be a threat to technical communicators. And in 2007, they said, well, we are not sure what the consequence of using those systems may be for the practice, for the daily work of technical writers. And a couple of years later, because, well, this is already 10 years ago, a couple of years later, in 2014, they said, well, maybe technical writers will be downgraded and their work will then be resembling assembly line workers. Because you don't have any creativity anymore, because as a writer, you're only allowed to write those very small content component blocks. So those very small components. And the people who write very interesting articles in the academic literature said, well, this really is a threat for the for the technical writers. Other things that we saw in the literature, and this is all from the literature, so we didn't know exactly what was happening in practice. One other thing was that transitioning to a component content management system is really difficult. There are some reports from case studies that show that it can be really hard to get to use such a system. So we knew about the advantages. We knew the academic literature that tells us it may be a huge threat to technical communicators, but we couldn't find any study in which the technical communicators, the technical writers themselves, give their opinion on what was happening, on how important it is, and what the advantages and disadvantages of using those systems are. So what we did was interviewing you. So I already told you we did 37 interviews with technical writers in a lot of different companies, 27 companies. And we just wanted to know, what do they think are the benefits and disadvantages of using content management systems? And also, how important are those content management systems for the future of technical communication? So those were our questions. And then I'll tell you shortly about the results. Well, the answer we got most when we asked about the benefits was something like this. There are lots of advantages, technical writers told us. Because when writing content, you shouldn't be worried about the layout because it just gets in the way. You know, I have this is a title, I have this is a paragraph, and I have an image. I know all those items. I don't care at this moment when I write content, how they're going to look on paper. That's something that comes afterwards. So technical writers are relieved that they don't have to worry about the layout anymore. Just concentrate on the important thing of the content. So that was one of the advantages that was mentioned quite often. And well, we have a whole list. And of course, I think you all already expected that reusing, single sourcing, consistency is the advantage of using component content management systems. We found out that there are lots of other advantages. So I already told you about the separation between content and layout. Some others told us about the good usability, about publishing, that's very easy, about collaboration, that's very easy. So a very positive picture. We also asked about the disadvantages of component content management systems. Well, the disadvantages, the challenges. Sounds a bit better. Surprisingly, or maybe not that surprisingly, we got the same answers about the same topics. So what for one person was a big advantage was for another one a disadvantage. So here someone told us the separation of the content and layout is a bad thing because I really want to see how it looks like. And if I can't see that immediately, that's just not nice for me. I don't like that separation between content and layout. And other disadvantages that were mentioned, some people said, well, collaboration is not easy. Usability is bad. Component-based writing is difficult. So there were also some disadvantages, challenges mentioned. In relation to the literature, we think that most of those challenges, those disadvantages, are related to the process of the implementation of a component content management system. Because that was not really our research question, but most of our interviewees told us something about how difficult it is to implement such a system. And here are some citations. Well, people told us it can take up to 2 years before such a system is working properly. And the change of roles is important, is sometimes difficult. So lots of the challenges, I think, are related to that difficult implementation process. And because I don't have time to tell you about that, but things that were mentioned about, like the bad usability, like collaboration is difficult, were mostly related to that process of implementation. Collaboration is difficult because not everybody got the same information about how to use this system. The usability is bad because I just don't know how it works. So the implementation process, instructing, educating the ones who have to use those systems seems to be really important, which is in line with what we read in the literature. About the future of technical communication and about the role of content management systems in that, what we heard most was, yes, of course, content management systems, they are important. Content automation, content components, it's all really important, and it will be in the future. But references to the type of information that should be included in those systems, because nowadays they are, of course, fit for using text, maybe images, but not so much already for using videos and other types of information. So that was a remark we got from numerous interviewees. And others said, yeah, in the future, content automation, components, they stay important. They will be important because it's so important you can relate better to your customers. Something that could be improved, in my opinion, is getting the reaction from your reader, your actual reader. And here someone who says, so it's not that I design a document. No, the customer, the client, he asks me for a document that perfectly fits his or her needs. And that is that is doable with a content management system. So technical writers are quite positive about the role of content management systems in the future. And that was not something that we read in the academic literature. So the answers to our research questions: advantages, disadvantages, the idea of that component content management systems are a threat to technical communicators. Our interviewees very rarely refer to that, so that doesn't seem to be an important thing. The transitioning to using a component content management system, that is something that is difficult. So that is what we recognized from the literature. So interviewees agreed with that, but they also said when such a system is implemented carefully, is implemented good, everybody has the same information about how to use it, then it's really good. Then component content management systems are good. So I want to thank you, the ones who participated in our study, because I think we from universities, it's really important that we work together with practitioners, because sometimes the information you get from the academic literature just doesn't fit or doesn't fit completely with what is happening in practice. So that was what I wanted to tell you about. Thank you all.
Thank you, Joyce. Assistant Professor, University of Twente. So next speaker will be Arthur Boivin. Ah, that's it. Okay. I give you the microphone and we start with your presentation. It's this one. There it is.
Hi everyone, I'm Arthur. I'm the CEO of Skills4. Skills4 is a company which develops technologies for real-time chatbot. We are mainly focused on the recruitment industry and also information, marketing and onboarding. We are here to talk about what the hell using a chatbot, what's the purpose of it. And I'm going to give you some feedback from my own experience and from some key facts you need to understand quickly, because the question is not why, but when. So first of all, what's a chatbot? Basically, it's a program that mimics conversation with a human. You may have seen a lot of examples. You're asking a question and the chatbot is answering. That means, in fact, a lot of chatbots are based on artificial intelligence. But the idea is it really what you need? Is it really based on artificial intelligence, or do you need something like simpler to deploy the service? The chatbot market, and it's just about Facebook Messenger, 34,000 chatbots are available right now on Facebook Messenger. Facebook Messenger, and you have to understand, in fact, that Facebook opened the Messenger to chatbot only last year. That means, in fact, since April 2016, 34,000 chatbots have been developed and put on Facebook Messenger. That means, in the end, every day, 100 chatbots are deployed on Facebook Messenger. So this is a part of the answer of why you need to use a chatbot, why you need to develop it. Because in fact, the market customer are asking for it. Among these 34,000 chatbots, mostly it's basically a new way to fill out a form or to answer a poll, mainly. It's not based on artificial intelligence. It's just a way to get information in another way. In fact, behind the term artificial intelligence, it's more like natural language processing. That's the only thing you need for basic chatbot to answer a particular customer need. The natural language processing, in fact, is a part of artificial intelligence, and it's a way to send, like, your chatbot is going to send to your natural language processing a string of character, and the NLP is going to translate, to convert this string of characters into a data that you can use and put in your database, update your CRM, or do something else with it. In the end, yes, you need also to train the NLP, because in fact, depending on what you are doing, for example, in recruitment, when you apply for a job, there is an expertise, so you need to train and to put a lot of, like, words, inputs in the NLP, so it can understand all the content depending on the intent provided by the user. For example, if you are building a chatbot, you can use, everybody knows Watson, Google Now, Siri, stuff like this, but there is also NLP, basically like API.ai, Recast.ai, or Wit.ai, which are in fact packages that you plug your API to it, and they will give you the NLP technology you need. And you can focus on the scenario of your chatbot. Apps are dead compared to the chatbot. The idea is that 90% of applications that you have on your smartphone, 90% of users left the application after 30 days. Because you try it, you use it, and if the promise is not strong enough, you will stop using it, because in fact it's too complicated. So in fact, when you focus on your customer, and you understand that your customer is dealing more and more with messaging application, and messaging application is like one of the biggest one is WhatsApp with 1 billion users. WhatsApp is not fully available to plug a chatbot to it. You can hack the library if you want, but it's not officially supported. With Facebook Messenger, you also have Line, Kik, and so on, depending on your customer, because the chatbot is just a way to deliver the service to your customer. So you have to understand where the customer is, what the application, the messaging application he is using, and deploy the chatbot on it. This is how we proceed to develop our chatbot. My company, at the beginning, was specialized in matching oil and gas consultants, oil and gas technicians, to requirement on site all over the world. So, you know, all the people going to work on the offshore platform for the oil and gas. Anyway, the idea was to think, okay, these guys, they are using Facebook Messenger and they are using WhatsApp. Okay, so this is the connector. This is where we are going to plug our chatbot because our clients are on this platform. Second step, we had to design a scenario. And in fact, the scenario for us, and this is our feedback, the scenario of the chatbot is in fact more important than the technology itself. Because designing the right scenario, it's in fact understanding your customer. And the more your scenario think about the customer, the more your customer will in fact give you all the information and you will be able to answer it in the right way. Then we plugged an NLP package. We are working with the API.ai. And in fact, as soon as we received a string of character from the user, we send it to API.ai and they give us the translation into a piece of data that we can use to update our database. So this is our architecture for our chatbot. And at the center, it's not the technology itself, because a lot of technologies are available. It is the scenario and how you understand the way your customer want to be onboarded. This is the most important part. In the end, I will not read all of this. It's just for some key facts for you to understand the chatbot market. From my personal experience, I invested in my first company, so my first platform to match oil and gas consultants and requirement on site. I invested more than 100,000 euros just to develop the platform. And then I was like, okay, maybe it will be good to also have an application to support the online marketplace. So, okay, it's again 20, 30, 50,000 euros you have to invest in it. And in the end, after like more than 12 months working on it, in the end we said, okay, but in fact, our clients, they are on messaging apps and they are ready to apply and to get matched and to find a job through this kind of messaging application. So we stopped, in fact, the platform, the marketplace. We stopped everything. We stopped the application. And we developed, in the end, only the architecture based on the chatbot with a good scenario. And the promise to the customer was the same than a full marketplace. So the idea is not, why do you have to use a chatbot? It's when are you ready to start thinking about how you can distribute and how you can support your customer through a chatbot. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. So now I'll give the mic to Andy, and he will give you a short introduction about the Information 4.0 subject that we have this afternoon. I will change.
Good morning, everybody. I think a lot of people know me. I'm Andy MacDonald. I work in France. I'm in the content documentation world for about 30 years, chiefly in the oil industry, and we're designing systems for delivery around that. If people want to talk about that, we can do that in the next few days, but this is not the subject. What we're going to try to deal with here is what the hell is Information 4.0? So what's the state of the art? Today in Utrecht, wet paint, we're designing it. We just painted the walls as you came in, trying to understand what the hell Information 4.0 is. And the next step is getting you engaged in the debate. So what have we done? Over the past year, we started in Porto. So with Porto, we went on to different places with other alcohols. I'll tell you that later. So all through the different tracks, this crazy guy met another crazy guy who's sitting over there, and we decided to say, well, where are we at today in our industry as far as content is concerned? What are we doing? What's technology going to do that will change the way we work, deliver, and that people are writing for will read, consult, and use the content we're doing? So we said, what are we going to do? Are we going to start a whole intellectual track? So we came up with an idea. We need to get together gurus of all trades to work together. But that fell apart when we decided, well, we're over middle age, and that turned us into old goats. So we didn't want to go down that track. We want to get an intellectual track going that kind of unifies thinking across our industry and other industries. What we're hearing today is a lot of the stuff that we're saying is being said by everybody else here in Utrecht. That's normal because a lot of people in this room are the forward thinkers on where our industry is going. If I go to a software conference, they have no idea what we're talking about yet. If we go to a content strategy, which we did in London with Rahel, the debate's a little different. Rahel branded us as the trend of 2017, but the trend of 2017 is understanding the role that technology will have in information in the future. So technology impacts everything we do around information, fine. But it also impacts the user experience. All right, what's the user experience? If I'm a marketer, my user experience is about getting somebody to buy my product. If I'm wanting to sell a trip, a journey, a hotel room, user experience is convincing the person to buy. That is not my stance on user experience. our information needs to build experience for the user. That's the chief process of getting snippets of information for people who have an 8-second attention span and who get bored after 30 seconds. How do we build and increase the power of the knowledge and feed it back into the system? That's part of what Information 4.0 is. We have chatbots, we have augmented reality, we have prediction algorithms who want to tell me what I was thinking last week means that I'm going to think that tomorrow. I'm not sure that that is an information experience we need to authorize. And you'll notice that some of the things around Information 4.0, and we have a debate tomorrow on responsibility and ethics. There's a reason for that. So I have all this thing about learning, all of the learning algorithms. I come from an industry where we've had them for 30 years. We tried deep learning ages ago. One of the huge learning algorithms is by a mathematician called Kohonen, which gave the neural network system, which is about refining models to look for similarities in big data sets, to be able to do image analysis. And we're now trying to move it to language. We're now trying to move it to knowledge. I'm not sure that it will produce the promise that has been put out there and that has been marketed. And the chatbot evolution is an example of that. Artificial intelligence, we've known it. When did artificial intelligence start? Anybody know? If you know, put up your hand. It was Alan Turing. I'm not letting you answer because it'll take more time. That was Ray. Alan Turing, Second World War, breaking the Enigma machine. And his job is now used as a test to know if a machine is intelligent. So if a machine can mimic a conversation, the Turing test says it is probably intelligent. Now, I can mimic a conversation. A chatbot mimics conversations. That does not mean that the chatbot understood what you said. It means that there's a correlation and a deep learning mapping that's using mimicked phrases to get you to the result that people want you to get to. That's where we need to be very careful on how we're selling this stuff, marketing it. And we have to market it. We have to market everything we do. The technology cannot think it is creating information before it is actually capable of creating information. AI will be AI when it becomes cognitive. And that is not a step that's going to happen probably in the next decades. Information is everywhere, in and around all this. This will change our ecosystem, whether we like it or not. It may reduce the part of work we do, it may change the way we work, it may change delivery, it may change the use. That will be seen over the next few years as these technologies become actually ingrained in the market that our clients are using and want us to use to get results out there. It'll change the nature and the value of information itself. All right, I'll move on to the next one and explain why. This technology has the capacity to produce information in greater volumes than we can, faster, and get it out there faster. The question is the information produced by this technology going to be intelligent, intelligible, comprehensive? I'm sure that bots today, if we talk about IoT, all of our smartwatches, not a smartwatch, but our smartwatches are producing information. Devices in the future, especially in medicine, will be monitoring, and they will probably want to regulate and interact with our health systems to say, well, you didn't walk enough today. If you don't walk enough today, your premium will change. So most of the information out there will have an impact. It needs to interact with the way we treat information. We are in an area where we design information for at least awareness, possibly knowledge, but it's about getting a value out there for the people. The value of the other forms of information produced by technology are not necessarily the same. So Information 4.0 is about how do we adapt to all this? How do we come to a common understanding that we can express to the other actors around us who have a lot more capacity than we have to see where our industries are going in the future? It'll also mean training through universities and the rest of it. So where are we now? We have a definition, all right? Ray and I came up with a definition about a year ago saying that Information 4.0 in terms of structure is molecular. It has to be dynamic. Dynamic, fine, that's a nice term, but how do you make information dynamic? We've heard a few things about intelligent, smart information and the rest of it. It's a bit down that track, but I'll get back to that later. It is offered. That means it's no longer enclosed in documents, in stuff. It is totally accessible by all other forms of readily operable technology. It is spontaneous. It's spontaneous much more than we think. Devices will produce information that need our information aligned with it to help understand it. When you get that concept, you see that the assembly and the supply is a completely different issue. It's profiled. Profiled, there is no purpose sending me stuff in a language I can't read. There's no use in sending me information I already know about. There is no use sending me information in a context where I am not capable or interested in absorbing it. That's a destructive element that will create a lot of dissatisfactions, probably why people fall off apps, because the promise is not fulfilled. And one of the things that we think is that, in fact, profiling doesn't mean knowing who I am. It's understanding what my context is. And my context is something that's changing all the time. We have all this technology. I added a few things that aren't in the list of standard things we hear about. Contextualizers. In Finland, there was the research project for Nokia 8 years ago on a contextualizing engine. Some of the American institutes are working on contextualizing engines, and I think in Germany there are initiatives we need to look into that are capable of not just sensing, but being aware of context that can profile information that needs to be delivered. We wanted Matthias Peissner from Fraunhofer to be here today to talk to you about UI 4.0, where's it going, the interfaces we use in software, and about his angle on contextualizing engines. Unluckily, he was sick this morning, so he couldn't get to us. We'll do something else tomorrow in his talk to help you move forward on that. He is working on emotive interfaces. UI on software that reacts to emotion. There are a lot of emotional algorithms out there that allow us to detect from the shape of my face, my mood and the rest of it, and provide content that will, if I'm angry, I'm not going to see stuff quickly, right? That's one example that's used a lot. If I'm a user who's dissatisfied, we have to be able to, I'm going to shorten it. So, issues we need to solve. We don't know what our missing pieces are, and we don't know how all this fits together. We're not that pretentious, okay? So, what we're going to be proposing over the next few days, we think we need to set up a structure that brings us all together, at least in a think tank, and that gets some funding back into our organization. The chatbots are getting millions to set up. They're startups. They're getting all this money to do the things that are impacting us. It's about time we turn some of the issues around and get our industry back on top of the issues. And as Andreas says, let's drive the bus and not get hit by it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andy. So we're a bit out of schedule, but we have time for some small, quick questions to the speakers. Anybody? There's one.
Wonderful talks. I have a question. This is for everyone and anyone who wishes to answer it. How do your propositions, your solutions, how do you see them applying to people in different parts of the world? And I'm thinking Sub-Saharan Africa, India, not the most populated parts of it, and this applies to how you collect the data, how you distribute it. So this is a general question. Thank you.
For example, because the first chatbot was in the oil and gas industry, so you are working with many different nationalities. We tried the concept with like almost 80 different nationalities. And for example, with the Indian people, for them it was like completely normal. It was the normal way to apply for the next mission. We tried it with people from the UK or the US. It was not the same way. They expected someone to call them to qualify the profile and then apply for the job and go on the mission. But for Brazil, India, and Philippines, it was very smooth. So it clearly depends on your customer. That's why I was talking about the scenario, and I was talking about the messaging app or support you use to be focused on the customer.
Thank you. Any other questions? Remarks? Ray, okay.
I also have an answer for Rosario's question, which is that when you're working with molecular information, that is information in small bits, it allows the users to assemble information in a way that's culturally appropriate for them and that fills the gaps in their particular knowledge. We as information providers can't possibly know what they know or don't know. So what we have to do, and this speaks to the dynamic issue that Andy mentioned, is have a way to be able to offer them a range of information sufficiently large that they can find what they need and sufficiently restricted that they're not overwhelmed.
I just add one remark. That's the concept, right? The proof now needs to be in the pudding. There is nothing out there apart from the two examples we've seen this morning that actually does that. Just to be clear, we don't have working elements on all of that.
Okay, thank you. It is a good bridge to lunchtime. Thank you, all speakers. Thank you very much for your wisdom and your words. We're going for lunch now, and at 2 o'clock we'll continue the program in the rooms. If you follow the hallway, you get in the small rooms there. You can find the speakers. So if you want to know more about the customer journey or the Information for Zero, about technical writing, we have a special session tomorrow morning with technical writers. So enjoy lunch. Thank you.